Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today is March 31st, 2021, Wednesday, and we are going to continue with our 365 Days with Jesus, also known as Reading the Bible in a Year challenge, reading God's Word in a year. And we're reading this in a sequential order, right? So from the beginning to the end. So from the Old Testament, from Genesis to the New Testament, the last testament, and to the last book called Revelation. Now, for today's Bible chapter readings, we're reading the book of Second Samuel, chapters 12 and 13. So there are two chapters, a bit lengthy, but actually not so much. The first one has 31 verses, and the second one, I'll tell you how much right now. The Second Samuel 13 has about 39 verses. So it's not too bad. It's medium size, which makes it a great read for the morning, afternoon, if you have a break, or maybe in the evening as well. We can always read. That's the beauty about God's word. We can read it at any time of the day. So Second Samuel chapter 12, as we were going with yesterday, Nathan rebukes David. So Nathan is the prophet now during David's reign, and he tells him this story about there's these two men in the city. They both had a large herd, um, like a farms, you could say, but they lived in the cities. The same city, let's call it one city, right? I don't know, Jackson Heights, right? For those who live in New York City in the borough of Queens in the US. Um, and actually, no, one of them had a big herd of sheep. The other one only had one sheep. This little, it says in verse 3, little lamb. So one was rich, he had a lot of sheep, and on this other man who was very poorly had one little lamb. So he loved this lamb so much, it actually, like, he like raised the lamb like as if it was like a daughter to him. It says verse 3, like a, you could say like a really close like dog, like one of those like pets that where we kind of consider like family, right? Like pets and our animals are like family to us. So this now there was this traveler who came to the rich man, and back then, I don't know about now, I'm not saying modern people are not as hospitable. However, I feel like back then there was a lot more hospitality. There were even customs and rules and laws how to be hospitable to foreigners or travelers. So now there's this traveler or visitor coming to the rich man, gonna stay over. And the rich man was, I don't know if it was laziness or whatever, but he was trying to avoid, out of, let's say he has 100 sheep, and to prepare a meal he could have used one of those sheep and make this meal for this traveler and for the family, whoever's with him, right? Because the rich man could even get more sheep, and even though one dies, he has 99 more, right? So he took the poor man's little lamb, the one that I said that he raised like a daughter, and he killed it and prepared it for his guests. So as Nathan the prophet is telling David this horrible story, David's anger burned, right, against this guy. He's like, verse 5, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall make restitutions for the lamb four times as much. So I guess four lambs, or as the lamb was worth, right? Because he did this thing and had no compassion. But then Nathan said, verse 7 says, you are that horrible man. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anointed you as king over Israel, and I spared you from your enemy, from the hand of Saul. I also gave you your master, right? Because Saul used to be his master's house. Put your master's wives into your care and under your protection. And I gave you the house, the royal dynasty of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have given you so much more. Why have you despised the word of the Lord by doing evil in his sight? Remember, and Nathan said it straight up to him. It continues, it says, you have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, have taken his wife to be your wife. You have killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. And I would say he raped her, right? Before. And then he killed Uriah. Then he takes her as a wife. Now, I'm not sure. I'm just saying it's rape just because he was an authority, and like she was forced to be with David. Like they just, his messengers took her, and it's like, oh, the king summons you, and back then, if the king summons you, like, yes, what can I help you? And then he just slept with her. Like, I think that's rape. So whether it was consensual or not, there's like a certain power struggle. That's a whole different topic, but still, he did horrible. He defiled another man's wife being alive, then kills him, right? And then takes the wife. Um, and then there's this curse on David. There's a consequence that says, now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, meaning a lot of death would be coming, bloodshed. because you have despised me and taken the wife of your the Hittite to be your wife. And he also has a lot of blood in his hands, David, from his wars and from killing Uriah. Innocent man. And he was so honorable. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday's video that I did, but he was a beautiful, honorable man. And then God says, behold, I will stir up evil from against you from your own household. So now the Amplified Bible commentary says this prophecy was fulfilled by David's lawless children, or possibly the children of his concubines, right? Amnon's attack on his half sister Tamar. We're going to read that next. And his subsequent murder by his half brother Absalom. Absalom's escape to a foreign land and 3 years in exile, followed by his estrangement from David for 2 more years. Absalom's deliberate rebellious attempt to win the hearts of the people and to supplant or replace his dad, King David. David's flight from Jerusalem with the mass of the people against him. The terrible battle in the forest of Ephraim, won by David's forces, with Absalom killed in flight. So his son dies. Another one, David's heartbreak is echoed repeatedly in the history of these tragedies. We're going to read that in 2 Samuel 13. And I'll be going over that in just a bit. And in some of his Psalms. Even when David was dying, his son Adonijah was attempting to usurp the throne and was later executed as a traitor. 1 King 1:5 and also 1 King 2:25. Horrible, horrible for that horrible error that he did. Um, And he said, God says, and I'll take your wives before your eyes and give them to your companion. We're going to see who he gives it to. It gets rough. And he will lie with your wives in broad daylight. And this is true. Public. We're going to get there. Indeed, you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before Israel and in broad daylight. David said to Nathan, he fesses up, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan said to David, the Lord also has allowed your sin to pass, or without further punishment you shall not die. Because you're going to die right then and there, right? Nevertheless, because by this deed you have given great opportunity to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme him, the son that is born to you shall certainly die. Then Nathan went back to his home. So that part with the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, I can understand, because this honorable king, right, who gets the throne that God blesses, now this has this beautiful kingdom, and all of a sudden he does this horrible thing. He murders somebody, rapes this person's wife, takes her as his own wife, strategically kills him, right? It wasn't just like, oh, he just got shot random. Like, no, he literally tells Joab, his military commander in chief, so high military strategist, put him front line. And obviously, the front line, 99.9% you'll die because you're the front line. You're like the first responders. You're right there. You're in front of the enemy. So, and Bathsheba was actually pregnant. So with that baby that she was pregnant with, the baby got very sick, just like God said, and he was dying. David fasted. He was doing his best to fast. He prayed and cried the whole time that this baby was alive. But as soon as the baby died, David's like, is the baby dead? Yep, he's dead. And the servants were scared because they're like, oh my gosh, he's not eating. He is fasting, right? You're starving yourself for who knows how many days it was. He's praying to God. He's crying. Now, if we tell him the baby's dead, he might go crazy, right? But nope. David did not go crazy. He actually stopped crying. He stopped fasting, stopped praying, and he's like, okay, you guys can serve me now food. And they did. They gave, what the king says. They gave it to him. And he ate. And then his servants like, we are confused. Like, what is this thing that you have done? Verse 21. While the child was alive, you fasted, you cried, but when the child died, you got up and you ate food. David said, yes, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept for it. I thought, who knows? Maybe the Lord may be gracious to me and the child may live. Maybe God will change his mind. But now he's dead. Why should I continue to fast? Can I bring him back again if I could, like, and it makes sense. Like, if he keeps fasting and like starving himself, right? He's gonna end up dying too. And he's not bringing the baby back. God said the baby's gonna die, the baby's gonna die. What God says will happen. So can I bring him back again? No, I will go to him when I die, but he will not return to me. Which makes sense. That was a interesting coping mechanism that David has. Solomon born. David, comforted his wife Bathsheba, they had sexual relations, and then she had another baby. And this baby, his name was Solomon. And we know he's a very famous wise king, right? and he's the one who makes the temple of the Lord, because Solomon didn't have blood in his hand. He wasn't a he didn't engage in war. Like, that's something God promised. He was gonna have peaceful throne. Although Solomon had his own battles, right? Spiritual battles, I like to say, mental battles, physical health battles, but that's something separate. But God really loved Solomon. He had like this, I think they both had this special relationship. So then, Nathan the prophet calls Solomon Jediah because he's the beloved of the Lord, like God. So Nathan really loves Solomon. Solomon was going to be like God's sweetheart. And David loved him, and so did Bathsheba. Was this like baby. After the first one, his brother died. Now this was like a gift in a way, right? The baby's staying alive, and he's gonna be a great king. Um, And I just want to make sure. Oh, then Joab says there's going to be there was this other battle and against Rabbah. So Joab, the military commander chief, said, "David, come with me. You are also man of war. Take this city, overthrow it, because if I take it, they're going to name the city after me. Do you want this king?" And David's like, "Heck no." So he goes and they fight, and God let them win that battle. So yeah. Um And an interesting fact, I want to go just before I keep going. He took there was this crown that they put on David's head. It says it's a talent of gold, but it says it's about 75 pounds. So the crown actually weighs 75 pounds. It must have been used primarily as a decorative symbol of power. You imagine wearing a 75-pound on your head and you pass out, you die, right? So it was very fun fact to give you guys. Because this chapter was heavy. Now, last chapter for today is 2 Samuel chapter 13. Amnon and Tamar. I've been saying his name wrong. Amnon and Tamar. So Amnon and Tamar, they're half siblings, right? They, or for those who consider, even if they're the same father but different moms, right? Because David had many wives and concubines. So David is their dad, but different moms. So mom one, mom two. And Absalom is the full brother of Tamar. So mom, I'm not sure what Amnon's mom was. Let's call her mom one. Mom two had these two kids, Absalom and Tamar. So Tamar is a lady, Absalom is a man, and Amnon is a man, right? So they're half siblings. Just so you guys could have a picture. Now Tamar, she was very known for her beauty. She had this natural beauty. They say she was a virgin, so she just had this pure beauty inside and out. But Amnon fell in love with his half sister. So remember, Amnon is this guy, right, from mom one. This is Absalom Tamar, but their sister from mom two. They're full brother and sister. He's half brothers with them, right? So Amnon fell in love with his half sister Tamar, which is not good. I don't know how else to say it. A little disgusting, right? To be honest. So he Oh, and then he has this really cunning friend. He had a slick friend. I like to say slick because that's more like the term we use now in modern English. He had a slick friend named Jonadab. And Jonadab said, "Hey, why are you so depressed? You're like so sad morning after morning." This is verse 4. "Will you not tell me?" And Amnon says, "I am in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister, my half sister." And then Jonadab said to him, "Go to bed, pretend you're sick, and when your father comes to you, you just say to him, 'Hey, bring my sister tomorrow so she can serve me food, and then I could eat it from her hand. I'll feel better, because she'll console me, like comfort me, and maybe I'll like cheer up a bit, but I'm not feeling well mentally, right? He's depressed because he's in love with his half sister, and he can be with her, right? So exactly what happens. So he stays in bed. King David, as the father and king, is like worried about his prince, his son, like, "Hey, you've been in bed, what's going on?" Absalom, Amnon, sorry, tells David exactly what Jonadab gave him, that wicked advice, because that just brings doors for temptation. So Tamar, listened to her father, King David, because King David repeated, "Yes, please go console your brother, make him some meat, some like loaves of bread, feed him. He's not like well." So, and Tamar's like, "Of course, this is my half brother. Let me go help him." So she did. Um, and he tells her, "Can you bring the food? And I want to eat it from your hand." She's like, "Okay." I mean, if I were her, I'd be like, "It's a little weird. Let me put it in a plate." But now Amna said to her just straight up, "Come lie with me, my sister." She replied, "No, my brother. Do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this graceful thing." But she even gives him a proposal, and I still think this is horrible. I guess she's like, "I'd rather this than getting raped," right? So she says, "As for me, how could I get rid of my shame and disgrace? Like this back then, women were like property. We weren't considered humans. Like we were secondary citizens, or maybe not even citizens. So, and you'll be considered one of the fools of Israel. So now just speak to the king, our dad, taking me as your wife, and I'm sure he won't withhold me from you, right?" But he didn't listen to her, and he, since obviously he was stronger than her, he violated her and lay with her. Not saying women are not stronger, but if this guy was like a man of war, they probably did some extreme exercise. It was really hard for her to get out, and the door was locked too. So now, all of a sudden, after he rapes her, he becomes extremely hateful. So I think this is when his spirit starts to notice like what I did was wrong, and now I hate her because now she's gonna remind me of this horrible error that I did. So he becomes extremely hateful to her, and his hatred became now greater than his love. He's like, "Get up, get out," and she's like, "No, you did. Now you sending me away, or you disgracing me, you casting me out, is worse than your rape, because they used to wear these certain clothes. It says if you keep going, that shows that she's a virgin, and I'm sure because he raped her, those clothes were ripped off or something. Now it's gonna look like she had sex, and now suspicion will arise. Things are gonna go horrible." So she puts dust on her head in grief, like it looks like she's mourning, like someone died. So then her brother, she was crying away. She had her head, down. She's crying out for help. So now her brother Absalom, her brother, remember I told you, is like, what was going on? Has your brother I'm not been with you? Like, I heard that you were with him, but now keep silent, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this matter to the heart. So Absalom consoled and quieted Tamar so he could plan his revenge. He was just saying that because he already had a revenge plan as soon as he found out what happened. So, so Tamar stays isolated, in Absalom's house. And when King David heard about all these things, he was angry, but he didn't take any action. He just stayed angry. He failed to take any action. And it says, according to Jewish law, Amnon should have been executed for the rape of his half sister. So the sister would have stayed alive, not him, obviously, because she's the victim. So Amnon would have been dead. Um, so Absalom also did not speak to Amnon either good or bad. Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. Makes sense. Um, then 2 years later, Absalom finally avenges Tamar. He tells his dad, as you know, I have a lot of sheep shearers. Let's go, and I'm gonna do this celebration with all of you. Remember, David has a lot of kids with all those concubines and wives. Not sure how many, but even David's like, "No, we're gonna be a burden because we're just too many people." And then Absalom's like, "Nonsense, fine. You know what, Dad? What about this? Can you can you tell Amnon to just come then?" And then David's like, "Why should he go with you?" I don't know if he's getting a little suspicious, or when like you invited all of us and now it's just Amnon. Just a simple curiosity. I don't know. But Absalom urged him, and then he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. So all his siblings and Amnon especially comes. Absalom tells his own servants, right? Because he's a prince, he has his own like nurses and servants and messengers. When I tell you, you're gonna kill him. Do not be afraid, because I'm the one commanding you. So I'm also a royal person. I know you are gonna be killing someone else, a royal person, but he's my brother, and I get, this is to avenge my sister. And they did. They kill Amnon during that celebration, and all the siblings, right? The king's kids were like in horror, like what happened? But he, in a way, executed execution, which is what the Jewish law. Now, was he the one supposed to? Probably not. It should have been King David, right? So now, um King David, some of the messengers told him, "Hey, all of your kids are dead," but isn't true. Then another person said, "Don't worry, King David, is not all your sons are dead. It's actually just Amnon. Absalom killed him." So now Absalom is, quarantining. He's in isolation. He left because now he's a refuge. Um, and he was in. He stayed with with his mother's father, Tamai, his mother's father. So with his grandpa, the son of Amihu, the king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. So David's failure to act when Amnon raped his half sister Tamar ultimately cost him two of his sons, not just one, right? Even though the other one's alive, but he's like in refuge, exile. So Absalom fled, went to Geshur, and was there for 3 years. And the heart of King David longed to go to Absalom, for he was comforted regarding Amnon since he was dead. Like, my son's dead, I can't do much, but my alive son, that's who I can work something out. So we'll see tomorrow what happens. That for tomorrow, April 1st, we're gonna read 2 Samuel chapters 14 and 15. This was, in other words, crazy. um Now some reflection questions. The As a counselor, think of this. What are some maybe not healthy patterns, behaviors, or thinking, or actions, or choices that we do, right? Maybe on a daily basis, maybe you've done in your past, present, or present life. How can you see it becoming maybe consequences, either positive or not, in your future? Maybe if you have children in the future, or your family members or friends, the people around you, even strangers, right? We can affect everyone with any choice we make. We just, God is the one who sees the whole picture. But what are some that you have in mind, or what is something now moving forward, right, after reading these chapters and learning from David's horrifying experience, right? What can we take to heart and mind and in actual practice in our life, that we can be a little more mindful, more conscious, and tell God, this is a new day, help me to make good decisions, help me to not act on impulsivity, even if the impulse decision might feel easier, or just might feel more tempting, or just more attractive, or it may seem okay or good, but if it's not, asking God for his Holy Spirit to give us that beautiful virtue of self-control. Because this story is what it is. It was lack of self-control, right? Something I teach my students, something I'm trying to also learn myself with God. And I feel like if we just exercise a little bit of self-control each day, our lives will be so much more flourished and enhanced for the better. So may God bless you all. I hope you guys felt, in any way encouraged despite the story. It's a little gruesome, and but I hope we can take to heart and mind, and take this as a learning opportunity for us to always be better, through God's right support, and to love God and love people at the end. So have a great rest of your day or afternoon or evening, everybody. See you tomorrow.